May 6, 1864. 2:47 a.m. A 42-year-old man is about to make the coldest decision in American military history. A decision that will cost 55,000 lives in 30 days. But save 4 million slaves. The calculation he made that morning would change everything. Grant raises his pen, hesitates. His hands, the same ones that have trembled for years holding whiskey bottles, are now as firm as steel. On the table, stacks of reports. Casualties, 18,000 soldiers in 2 days in the wilderness. His own generals want a retreat. But Grant isn't calculating a retreat. He's calculating something far more grim. And brilliant. He dips the pen in ink and writes 5 words that will change the war: "We will attack again at dawn." In the next 35 minutes, you will discover how a failed alcoholic became America's most feared general. The brutal mathematical calculation no other commander had the courage to make. Why Grant knew that losing 50,000 soldiers was winning. The 3-minute conversation with Lincoln that changed the fate of a nation. And how a decision made by one ordinary man saved American democracy. But first, you need to understand one thing. Grant wasn't a hero. He was a broken man, dismissed from the army for alcoholism, who sold firewood on the streets to survive. In 1860, this very man was considered the greatest military failure in the United States. In 1865, he would be the nation's savior. What happened between those two moments wasn't a miracle. It was pure math. Cold math. Deadly math. And it all started with a calculation his own generals called insanity. Ulysses Grant is working in his father's leather goods store in Galena, Illinois. At 39, he is a destroyed man. West Point, glory in Mexico, and then the abyss. The alcohol. The humiliation. The poverty. His wife, Julia, looks at him with a mixture of love and despair. "Ulysses, the war has started." "Maybe." Grant interrupts, "Julia, I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a failure." But Fort Sumter changed everything. Lincoln needed officers, any officers. The man who 3 years earlier was selling firewood to buy food now commands the 21st Illinois Regiment. No one expected anything from him. Not Lincoln. Not the army. Not even himself. Grant studies maps by lamplight. His fingers trace lines, calculate distances, measure possibilities. All the other Union generals think defensively: how to protect Washington, how to avoid casualties. Grant thinks differently. He thinks mathematically. He tells his officers, "Gentlemen, you want to know how to win this war? Stop trying not to lose." An officer responds, "General, I don't understand." Grant continues, "It's simple. The South has 9 million people. We have 22 million. They have limited resources. We have endless factories. If we fight a war of attrition, the math is clear: we win. But that means accepting casualties. A lot of casualties. More than any American general has ever accepted." The tent is silent. Fort Donelson falls in 3 days. 15,000 Confederates surrender. Grant doesn't negotiate. He demands unconditional surrender. The nation has a new hero: unconditional surrender Grant. But Grant knew Fort Donelson was just the test. The real calculation was yet to come. 6 a.m. The Confederate attack at Pittsburgh Landing explodes like a hurricane. Grant is miles away when he hears the first shots. His expression doesn't change. He rides desperately to the battlefield. What he finds is hell. Union soldiers flee in a panic. Generals scream for retreat. Sherman, wounded and bloody, finds Grant in the chaos. "Grant, we've been surprised. We lost the first line. We have to retreat." Grant calmly lights a cigar, looks at the chaos around him. "Retreat? Sherman, you don't understand. They attacked first because they're desperate." Sherman, incredulous, replies, "Desperate? They're slaughtering us." Grant points to the field, "Look closely. See what I see. They threw everything into the first wave. Tomorrow, when reinforcements arrive, who will be desperate? Sherman, we're going to attack at dawn. And we're going to win." That night in Grant's tent, he is alone, studying casualty reports. 13,000 Union soldiers dead or wounded in 1 day. His generals want to retreat across the Tennessee River. The press will call him a butcher. But Grant sees different numbers. He writes on paper: Union active military population, 2.1 million. Confederate, 750,000. Union replacement rate, 3 to 1. Industrial resources, 10 to 1. Grant understood what no other general had the courage to accept: to win, he would have to turn the Civil War into a mathematical equation of death. He calls Sherman for a private meeting at 3 a.m. "Sherman, listen to me carefully. This war won't be won with tactical genius. It will be won with arithmetic. Sherman repeats, horrified. Arithmetic? Grant continues, cold as ice. It's simple. They can't replace losses like we can. Each battle, even if we lose more men, we win proportionally. If I lose 2 soldiers for every one of theirs, in 6 months they'll have no army left. We'll still have 1,000,000. Sherman stares at him, shocked. Grant, you're talking about sacrificing tens of thousands of lives. Grant replies, I'm talking about saving hundreds of thousands of lives. This war can last 6 months or 6 years. The calculation decides. Grant implements his calculation on a large scale for the first time during the siege of Vicksburg. 47 days. Vicksburg starves while Grant waits patiently. Other generals would have attacked the fortifications, losing 20,000 men in an afternoon. Grant simply waited. The city surrenders. 30,000 prisoners. The Mississippi is the Union's. Lincoln finally found his general. But Grant pays a terrible personal price. The victories cost pieces of his soul. Every cold calculation costs a bit of his humanity. Julia writes worried letters. His children barely recognize him on visits. He reads a letter from Julia, Ulysses, will you come home as the man who married me? Grant crushes the letter. He has no answer. He knew he was becoming something necessary. But monstrous. A general who calculated deaths like others calculated supplies. And Lincoln was about to give him command of all the Union armies. The White House. March 1864. Lincoln receives Grant in the Oval Office. 2 men broken by war face each other. General Grant, I need to know one thing before I give you supreme command. Yes, Mr. President. Can you win this war? Grant hesitates. For the first time in years, his coldness falters. Mr. President, I can win this war. But the price will be terrible. What price? Grant looks directly into Lincoln's eyes. 50,000 soldiers. Maybe more. In 6 months. There is a deadly silence. Lincoln whispers, 50,000. Grant continues, the alternative is to lose 200,000 in 3 years. The math is cruel, but clear. Lincoln walks to the window, looks out at Washington. General, are you sure? Absolutely. Lee is a genius, but he can't perform miracles with numbers. Lincoln turns, decisive, then do it. End this war. May 1864. The forests of Virginia. The Battle of the Wilderness explodes like a green apocalypse. Lee attacks with genius, uses the terrain perfectly. In 2 days, Grant loses 18,000 men. The war council that night is tense. All the generals want to retreat. It's the pattern, a bloody battle, a retreat, a reorganization. General Meade says, Grant, we've lost almost an entire division. We need to fall back and regroup. General Hancock agrees, Lee has outmaneuvered us. It's time for a strategic retreat. Grant listens in silence, smoking his eternal cigar. Slowly, he stands up. Gentlemen, for 3 years you've been fighting the same war. You attack Lee, he counterattacks, you retreat. He chooses when and where to fight. That ends today. Meade tries to argue. Grant, be reasonable. Grant cuts him off, with a voice of steel, math isn't reasonable. It's inevitable. Lee lost 11,000 men. I can replace 18,000 in a week. He can't replace 11,000 in a month. They all stare at him in shock. Tomorrow we march south. Not north. South. Straight for Lee. The morning of May 7th. The crossroads. The most crucial moment of the American Civil War. The Union Army reaches the fork in the road. North means retreat, safety, reorganization. South means a direct confrontation with Lee, more blood, more death. Grant stops in front of the column, all eyes on him. There is absolute silence. Only the sound of the wind. Grant points south. Down that road, men. A burst of cheers and shouts from the soldiers erupts. In that moment, 120,000 Union soldiers knew, they finally had a general who would not retreat. Lee expected Grant to run like all the others. Instead, Grant was coming straight for him. And for the first time in 3 years, Robert E. Lee felt fear. Grant implements his calculation with surgical precision. Battle after battle. Cold Harbor. Spotsylvania. Petersburg. Each engagement costs thousands of lives, but Lee bleeds faster proportionally. In 40 days, Grant lost 55,000 soldiers. The press called him the butcher. Mothers cried his name like a curse. But Lee lost 35,000. And had no more reserves. Appomattox Courthouse. April 9, 1865. Lee rides to surrender to the man who calculated his defeat. In the McLean house, the 2 military geniuses face each other. One who relied on genius, the other who relied on math. Lee says, General Grant, You have won. Grant replies, respectful but firm, General Lee, math has won. Grant offers generous terms. Confederate soldiers can go home with their horses. This war has cost too much blood. It doesn't need to cost any more. The man who saved the Union pays the eternal price. The alcohol returns. Businesses fail. Throat cancer slowly devours him. But his memoirs reveal the final truth. I never liked war. But I understood that sometimes, to save lives, you have to take lives. To have peace, you have to wage war so terrible that no one wants war ever again. Ulysses Grant proved that great leaders aren't those who avoid difficult decisions. They are those who do the calculations that others don't have the courage to do. His cold calculation saved 4 million slaves, preserved American democracy, and changed the course of world history. Because sometimes, math is more important than heart. If you've made it this far, you understand that real leadership isn't about popularity. It's about doing what must be done, even when it costs you your soul. Next week, how Sherman calculated that burning the South would save the South.